Welcome to the Practical Church Revitalization podcast with our co-hosts Don McKinnon and Eric Malloy, where we look at church revitalization in real time.
All right, welcome to the Practical Church Revitalization podcast. I am your host, Don McKinnon of the First Baptist Church of Sutton, and you will notice I am here myself, and noticeably absent is Eric Malloy of First Church in Charlestown, who is actually having a much-deserved vacation time with family. Eric has had a missions team over. Maybe you've seen the pictures on our Facebook where they totally redid his sanctuary at Charlestown. And it's gorgeous. New Union Baptist Church was there and sent a team, and they really kicked butt and took names and really updated the look of their sanctuary. So, in his absence, I am joined by my beautiful co-host and also wife,
Natalie McKinnon.
All right, Natalie is the Kids Camp Director and Women's Ministry Coordinator at First Baptist Sutton. And she is going to be joining us today talking about some of the, snags and things to be aware of when it comes to jump-starting a kids' ministry, or any ministry for that matter, in a revitalization replant. But before we go forward with this, I'm going to kind of do some housekeeping. So here is some things that you should know of. Eric and I have been listening to you. We've been noticing people are searching on Google for the Practical Church Revitalization podcast and looking for a website. Well, I will let you know that we are currently working on getting a website live and active in the next month. So know that is on its way. We will have links to SoundCloud and iTunes on it. We will have links to our Twitter, our Facebook, and our Instagram accounts. So I know we haven't been talking about that, but we recorded 6 episodes and dropped those, and then had the interview with Jim Harrell, and we dropped that. And a lot of that stuff has been going on and added over the last few months. One of the other things to let you know, this is in no means a paid sponsorship, if you will, but the North American Missions Board is hosting the first ever Replant Summit, August 27th and 28th in Alpharetta, Georgia. The cost of this is amazing. It's $20 if you go with the full. That's $15 if you go without the pre-registration. It's $20 if you go with the pre-registration, which includes a lunch and an added breakout session. So that is going to be August 27th and 28th in Alpharetta, Georgia. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because one of our future podcasts is going to be a road trip. Eric and I both are going. Eric and I have the humbling honor of being the first 2 replants on the NAM map for New England. And so we are going down there on Sunday night. We are planning on, actually, if there's anybody from New England going, we actually have a meetup that we want to do. We want to meet up with people and just talk and get to know you if you're from the New England area. Even if not, we have a Facebook event carried through the Practical Church Revitalization page on Facebook. So if you're listening to this and you're going to the Replant Summit, look for the meetup on the Practical Church Revitalization podcast Facebook page, and let us know if you're going to be there, because this is something we want to get to know our brothers and sisters who are being, doing the grunt work here in New England and around. So if you're interested in that, join us. And that's going to be at the Waffle House. Just so you know, I've never eaten at the Waffle House. My wife is sitting here laughing right next to me. She's jealous. I'm just going to say this. She's jealous because she's seeing all this stuff. You know, we both sit here and watch Mark Clifton Mondays with Mark. Watch him talking about this upcoming conference, and she's just been jealous because she's not able to go this year. Hopefully next year she'll be able to go with me. But she's more jealous that I get to go to Waffle House and see what the southern thing is down there. I know it's a southern thing. My sister, who's from Louisiana, does not like Waffle House for whatever reason. But Eric, if he was here, he's a South Carolina boy. He's a Gamecocks fan, just so everybody knows. And he was looking forward. As soon as he found out this place was like a half mile from NAM's headquarters, he wanted to sign up for it. So that is going to happen on the 26th at 8 p.m. at the Waffle House there on, I think it's Old Mill Road or Parkway or whatever that is. But go to the Practical Church Revitalization Podcast Facebook page, look under events, and it's right there. So, my wife has been sitting here. She just doesn't know what to do. She hears me and Eric talk. You know, I don't like being the only voice in this, but you're an advocate anyway. You want to see not just something for replanters. You want to see something for replanters' wives.
Oh, definitely. I think it's very important for replanters' wives. A lot of times it's just conferences. I mean, there are conferences for pastors' wives, but they're few and far between, or you have to travel a great distance. So one thing that I would like to eventually do is be able, I mean, I do have a Facebook page for pastors' wives. I'm part of a couple pages on Facebook for pastors' wives. One of the good ones that NAM puts out is Replanters' Wives. Excellent page, good administrators, a lot of encouragement, very seasoned pastors' wives on there that also new pastors' wives that are just getting into the ministry with their husband. But a lot of good encouragement, good advice, a safe place, a closed group where we can just encourage one another and share our struggles and our triumphs and ask for prayer if we need it.
And you were put on to that by our replant and revitalization. I don't know what we would call him, director. I don't know what Dave Jackson's official title is, but Dave Jackson here in New England is heading up a lot of the talk, and he holds usually a monthly meeting with the replanters, and it was actually his wife, I think, that...
Yeah, it was Joyce that suggested it, so I checked it out, and I've really been encouraged and connecting with some of the pastors' wives on a personal basis on there. So
yeah, so
actually I found one yesterday that had only been there for 14 months, so 1 month give or take longer than me and Dawn had been at our church. So
yes, we just celebrated a year at our church. Actually, we celebrated a year, and then a month later Eric and Sarah, Eric's wife, they celebrated 3 years at Charlestown. So it's been kind of a couple of months of anniversaries in June and July. Plus also Eric's birthday was a couple of weeks ago. And this is a rarity for you, where we just kind of did the bucket drop and shipped out. This one is actually happening in live time. So this podcast is going to go live this week, and today is the 25th?
No, 24th.
24th, yeah. Today's the 24th.
I'm Miss Secretary.
Yeah, administrator.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. For all of you in church replants, you know that your wife is probably wearing as many hats as you are. And so, one of the things that Natalie is my administrator there, and she's been a good when it comes to us trying to figure out like what we're going to do with community groups and different things. We've been just trying to work together as husband and wife and ministry partners and coming up with what needs to be. And so with that, I guess we can just jump into our conversation. We are talking about children's ministry. I think we're also going to touch a little bit on women's ministry too. But Natalie, tell us. I mean, I know you. I've known you 23 years. We celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary.
Yeah, a big one coming up in September.
September. So, I've known you quite a long time. But for the listeners, they don't know you. See, this is how I get. I'm looking across at the most beautiful woman in the world, and she is making me flustered. But anyway, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I basically accepted Christ when I was about 5 years old, got baptized around 12, grew up in the church, pretty much been involved in different ministries for as long as I can remember, different churches that I had gone to in the past, children's ministry, nursery. Also, when my husband was the youth pastor at one of our churches, I was the lead female youth leader, and I really enjoyed working with the teenagers. I did some events, the events coordinator at our old church. I worked in the children's ministry, and then I also was the events coordinator too. But God's really stretching me and showing me what He has planned for me. It's a lot different role being a lead pastor's wife from just kind of doing those other ministries. But I have a lot of good mentors in my life. So right now I'm, like Don said, I'm leading the children's ministry. We call it Kids Camp. And I also right now oversee the women's ministry. And eventually I would like to focus, as the church grows, more on the women's ministry after I get a good team for the children's ministry.
Okay. Now, I'm going to throw this out there because we talked about you being, you mentioned about being the events coordinator at New Hope, our old church, and yes. You did do a little bit of that at Meeting House, yes. Our sending church.
Yes.
And one thing that we did at both churches, being that with New Hope it was a smaller church, less than 100 people. Meeting House at the time was also less than 100 people.
Right.
I know right now I think they're pushing close to 200, and they're a replant themselves. They were a church plant, but then they merged with a dying church, Central Baptist in Middleborough, and became basically a replant. So they've been doing well. They've almost, I think, 200 people now. But one thing that we did at both churches that you organized was a Thanksgiving dinner. And the reason why I bring that up is I think for a lot of churches, especially the smaller churches, because there is such a family feel among the yes. churches. And we actually did this back... actually the Sunday before Thanksgiving at Sutton.
Yep.
We did a Thanksgiving potluck, a family Thanksgiving potluck, and basically it was everybody signs up and brings something.
Yep.
We had one family at Sutton that brought a turkey fully cooked. We had the same thing at Meeting House and New Hope, where a few families brought turkeys, enough to feed people, enough to send people home with.
We always had enough food.
Yeah, it was enough to send people home with leftovers. But I bring that up because I know a lot of people try to figure out different events that they can do, and that's a great event
yeah.
to invite family and friends to, because they're going to go to church. and then they get to eat afterwards.
Right. At New Hope, it was a very good event. Brought the church together, and if I'm not mistaken, I think they've continued that tradition to this day. And we've been gone for quite a few years, but it's just a thing that the church really enjoyed, and it brings the community feeling that should be in a church family together. And we encourage the church to invite their family and friends, maybe someone that hasn't been to church or searching, and it's a perfect opportunity for someone to come to church, be encouraged. Sometimes we'll do like a small short devotion. Sometimes we'll go around and we'll say what we're thankful for. Sometimes we'll do some music. So I know our church is looking forward to doing it again this year, and we're planning to do it and have it as a regular tradition each year.
Yep, and I know Meeting House did it a few years, but as they've grown, it just became something that they couldn't continue in that tradition. But I think from what I remember, it sounds like a lot of their community groups have done something similar the week before Thanksgiving. So let me ask you this. When it comes to coming into a replant or a revitalization,
okay,
and you have a church that is looking to jumpstart or restart a ministry. So in this case, we'll use the children's ministry. What are some of the roadblocks and hiccups and different things that usually happen in that church, in that setting, that kind of get people that are there, like they've never really thought about, or they've never, like trying to get the ministry, let's go with that, trying to get the ministry started. What's a couple of things that you ran into, especially now that you've gone from being sort of like in the associate role into the administrative role in the ministry?
Well, I think each church is going to be affected differently, because each church is going to have their own obstacles or things that they're going to be faced with. But in a general sense, if it's a revitalization or sometimes more like a replant, and it's a small congregation, sometimes it's resources, lack of resources sometimes. We've been very, very blessed with churches and family and friends that have just generously donated things for our children's ministry. When we got to Sutton, there wasn't much left in the nursery. I put the word out. That's what you got to do. You got to let people know. As in the capital C, we need to be there for one another. Let your brothers and sisters know this is a need that we have, because there's going to be a time when that church might have a need that you might be able to help them and everything. So we've been very blessed with toys and supplies. When we were getting ready to go to Sutton, Meeting House just said, go into our closet, our supply closet, and take whatever you need. So I was able to get, because there really wasn't much left. Another thing will be teachers. Having teachers, having a team,
right,
to be able to have classes.
When we went there, we had 6 people, and then we basically doubled the number and then almost tripled the number. We've had some people leave for different reasons now. We just lost our worship leader, who has some family things going on. He may or may not be back. We don't know at this point. But, it was one of those things where you have people, but either they're doing things. His wife Brenda was able to step in as needed with the nursery because we had one young family with a 8-month-old come in, and she willingly went and helped in that nursery ministry and do that. And but when it comes to teachers, now you've been able to actually get one of the people. One thing we can throw out there is when you have a church that is in need of revitalization, depending on what's going on there, I know of situations in other churches where people have run the children's ministry for years. They didn't
Get
really
burnt out.
Yeah, they get burnt out, and they need to take a season away and refresh, which I think is something that becomes a hot button issue within churches, because
Right.
a lot of people believe even the pastor needs a sabbatical, but then there are other churches and denominations that don't think the pastor needs or anybody needs a sabbatical to rest and just get back on the same page with
And
God.
that's not healthy thinking.
Right.
Right.
And so,
I was just gonna say, God's been good that the little boy that I teach, his mother actually has stepped in. So once a month, she gives me a break, because that's the thing with revitalization is because you're wearing so many hats. Even though you might not have a big children's ministry or whatever ministry you're doing, you don't have a lot of people alongside you. So it's still very easy to get burnt out.
mm-hmm.
So, and again, it's about being honest with your congregation and saying, this is something that I need help with. Is it possible that you could step up? And it gives them an opportunity to serve in a capacity. So she's been a blessing to step up in that role. Once a month she'll teach, and I just kind of lay it out for her, and it gives me a chance to be fed. And we just continue to trust God that He will bring more teachers. And but I also think another thing is like the facilities sometimes.
Yep.
When you get to the church, not knowing sometimes what kind of condition it's going to be in. So you might have a children's area, or you might not have a children's area. In our case, we technically had one, but it wasn't ready to be a children's area when we first got there.
Right. It was the former youth ministry area. There were classrooms down there, but one thing that happens, and I'm sure the listeners know this, what happens in a lot of times where the facilities stop being used, and as people are like leaving, the building might be debt free,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that it's not repair free. Like
Right.
there's repairs and
Renovations
that need to be done, upkeep. So like we have right now, we have 2 classrooms down there that do not have lights that work.
Right.
We have one that works, but we're not even using that as a classroom. So one thing that we just had earlier this month, we had actually Eric Malloy's church, First Church Charlestown, actually sent out 8 people to...
They did an amazing job.
Yes. They came out to First Sutton, and they spent,
Good 7 hours.
Yeah, 6-7 hours painting and repainting. Well, painting and repainting things. Adding coats of paint. We have like a lot of metal chairs there, and I love this. This actually came from one of the women at the church. The idea was, instead of spending money for new chairs, take the old chairs, buy spray paint, and just spray paint them bright colors. So we have actually 3 red, 3 blue, 3 yellow. We did the primary colors, and we had those done up. They did an excellent job. We kind of had this very 60s colors down there for the church, even though I think it was repainted in the 90s. But
Yeah.
it definitely did not.
It needed bright colors for the children's ministry.
So we got one of our trustees. He actually picked the green, and he picked the perfect color green for the room. It went with the teal that Natalie and the women picked. But I'm telling you, I bring this up because it's amazing what churches that are, two revitalizations coming together to help one another, and then on top of that, just seeing the transformation of that room, that space, it just looks brand new. It's not 100% done. We're still trying to do it. We're having a fall relaunch coming this fall. So, we still have some paint that we have to touch up.
Get the stage put in.
We're going to have a stage, but I think if you go to again, another thing for the Practical Church Revitalization Facebook page, you will see pictures there, and the team from First Church Charlestown that came out and helped, and they just really had a servant's heart to work. In fact, a number of them were getting ready to leave, and we brought the chairs in, and they came to realize that the chairs were not perfect. They were not fully covered the way they should have, and like 4 of them took the chairs back out there and just hit them again with spray paint. They did what they came to do, and we're grateful. We are so grateful for it. Our church was so happy. But we talk about that because the facilities aren't always there. I mean, sometimes you do have facilities where something is just very dated. Like I've heard stories of facilities where you walk in and it's still the 1950s or 60s or 70s. Like even the curtains, they have wallpaper that yellow, and I'm not talking yellow like the wallpaper is yellowed, but there's like this nasty yellow paisley wallpaper that needs to be done. Natalie and I went that next Sunday, that next day, which was Sunday, we actually went to First Church for their Sunday. They started a Sunday evening service once a month, and we went there, and Eric took us around their church. I'd already been there once, as most of you know, but this was Natalie's first time, and he talked about having to paint over that type of wallpaper.
Right.
So that's one thing, is the facilities. Now, one thing I'm gonna ask you to touch on this because you are a huge advocate on this. It's something that I think a lot of churches don't realize that they need to do. Like they do one of them if they know about it, but they don't know that there's 2 that they need to do. And in fact, I've even gone and done it for myself at the church, just so if I have to step in for anything,
you're covered.
I'm covered. So what we're getting at is, you tell us what it is.
Coming from someone who also went to college for early childhood education, it's very important for churches to be well educated when it comes to Corys and Sorries. Mm-hmm. Today's day and age, you can never be too careful.
Now, for our listeners that don't know, they might have heard of Cory, which is a criminal. Offensive.
The Sorries is for the sexual.
Right. So let me get the letters down for them. So the Cory is the Criminal Offense Record Inquiry, and the Sorry is the Sexual Offense Record Inquiry.
Yes.
So
they're not together. They're separate.
They're not together.
To do them
so a
separately.
So a Cory is Cori, Sorry is SORI. They do not keep them together because basically a lot of states, if somebody has a Sorry record and they're trying to go for a job, it will keep them away from getting a job that they want, so they actually keep these 2 separate.
Right.
Doesn't make sense in a way, but that's just the way that states have done it. And so many churches just do the Cory and think that they're
covered.
They're covered. We know of a church near us that we have a family member who was an elder at the church after the fact, but they had a guy come in and become a youth leader, and they did the Corey and figured they were fine, and then he assaulted some of the teens there, and it just turned into a mess, because then, as it turned out, they found out that he did have a record, but because of the fact that the sexual offender records are kept separate from the criminal offender records, it did not show up on the Corey. If they had done both, they would have seen that this person had a record of sexual offenses, and they would have saved themselves the heartache that this church.
And there's actually trainings that children's directors can go to that will walk you through all the safety policies and procedures that you need to know. You need to advocate. You need to do the research. Because you're responsible as a children's director, not just for the children, to keep the children safe that come through your front doors, but also for liability issues for your teachers and your team that you're in charge of. So it's definitely something that can't just be brushed under the rug. It's important. It has to be taken care of. Safety needs to be top number one.
And one thing for our listeners to know is that in some cases, denominations do help with the cost of Corys and stories. I've been looking for it. We're part of the Southern Baptist Convention, and I know Natalie actually was able to carry hers over from Meeting House, and like I said, I had to pay for mine, but the Southern Baptist Convention a few years ago did say that they would have something with the North American Missions Board to be able to help churches pay for that. So you might want to look into that. There is a difference in cost between a nonprofit organization and a regular business.
Right.
I know in the state of Massachusetts, here it's like $25 if you're a nonprofit organization and $50 if you're a business. So that's just something for you to understand and know. Now, I want to ask you this: what are some of the joys you've seen? Our kids ministry's small. We're not gonna sugarcoat it here. It's small, but what are some of the things you have experienced?
Well, I love working with children, so it's fun to be able to just be creative and let God kind of do what He wants to do, because He's the one that does what He's going to do. But in the year that we've been here, just seeing the growth in the boy that I teach, from a kid who was kind of shy and didn't want to come to church that much, to now, basically, if he has to miss church, begs his parents because he wants to come.
Right.
That's exciting to me, because it's not me that's doing it. I'm just God's instrument. I'm just being the vessel that He's using. He's growing the seeds. But to see him grow, a couple months ago, I had him do his first presentation since we had been there in front of the congregation. And he was a little nervous, but with a lot of encouragement, and make sure that he was prepared. He got up in front of the church, and we were doing a curriculum called On Route 66, so it goes through the books of the Bible, Genesis through Revelation. And so the kids learn a new story each day, and it's supposed to last a whole year. We've been making this timeline that we're going to eventually put on the wall downstairs. And he's been drawing, so at the end of each lesson, he will draw what he's learned to add to the timeline. So he got up in front of the congregation and presented it to the congregation, and he did an amazing job to see that growth and the memorization to know that it's sticking in here and in here in his heart. And, he's growing and asking questions. It's exciting. He also, a couple months ago, we were talking, and I asked him what he felt about baptism, about taking that next step. And he turned to me and he said, I don't know if I know enough. I don't think I'm ready. And I think he felt kind of bad that he wasn't ready. But I looked at him and I says, don't you realize that's maturity on your part to know that you're not ready? That shows that you are getting ready. He didn't realize that. Mm-hmm. So it was just really encouraging to me to see that growth. And then he's also, just about 2 weeks ago, said to me, because our kids camp runs ages 5 through 12. We have our nursery 0 through 4, and then our kids camp 5 through 12. So when they graduate at 12 years old, they would go into the youth group when we eventually get a youth group. And he looks at me and he says, can I become a teacher when I graduate kids camp? And I was just like, wow, this is so cool. Because I think giving those kids ownership of their ministry keeps them
wanting to serve.
Yeah. And they feel like they have that ownership, what I say, even at a young age, matters.
Yeah, and one thing, too, about him is he was very active during the Chain of Lights, which was...
yes.
We kind of piggybacked. We talked about this on a previous podcast. We piggybacked off of a community event, something that the town was putting on, and he was dedicated to serve.
Yeah, definitely.
He was definitely there, dressed up as an elf, and just,
talking to the kids and interacting.
Talking to the kids that came in, and really active. Another thing that he's going to be doing, we're talking about making improvements to the facility. He's actually volunteered to go there with his mom and do some of the touch-up downstairs, but also our handicap ramp is in dire need of paint.
Yes.
And he is actually going to be going there and scraping it off.
Yeah.
And painting that himself.
Yeah.
He's going to have his mom and dad to help him, but
right.
It's one of those things where it just makes your heart realize that this is a kid that understands the ownership and stewardship of the building. He understands that he is a church member. He is this person that just wants this building to be the best representation for the community.
Well, I think when you lead by example and show not just the congregation but the children in the church, God's given us stewardship over this building and the things that are inside the building. Children pick up on those things, and you lead by example. Sometimes it's not even what you say, it's how you act. And lead by that example, and they follow in that. And when even if you don't have a lot, you take care of what God's given you, and you do the best you can to make it look presentable and exciting and fun for the children. So you invest in it. He's seeing that we're investing in in the ministry that he's part of, right. In the children's ministry. We care about making this special. Because, yes, our first priority is, that safety for the children, growing in their relationship with Jesus Christ. But also, make it fun. We want our children's ministry to be fun. We want it to be exciting. We want it to be something that the children look forward to. Having a relationship with Jesus is not just supposed to be all rules. It's supposed to be something that's fun, exciting. You want not just your congregation to look forward to coming on a Sunday morning to hear the sermon. You want the children and the teenagers to come and say, I'm excited about going Sunday to children's church and kids camp. I'm excited about coming on Wednesday night for youth group or to community group, whatever it may be,
Now, let me ask you this. What are some of the things, we talked about having to refresh, and, we opened up talking about the fact that Eric and I are going to the Replant Summit, but, there are things out there for children's ministry.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you've gone to kind of refresh, connect?
A couple of years ago, I went to a children's ministry conference. It was like I think it was like a 9 to 4 conference, called Lead Kids.
Yep.
And it's been,
Our friend Andy Newman
it's become very popular, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger every year. I've only gone like twice, I think, but it's an excellent resource. You have like general speakers for the conference that will speak. Then you have the time of worship for everybody. They'll have like lunch and meals provided. But then they also have breakout groups for whatever. Like if you're a nursery worker, they have something specifically for nursery workers. I mean, they break it down so well. If you have something for children's ministry for the older kids, they break it down. So that was really good. And then the other thing that I went to was, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it was more of a, I think it was through the SBC?
It was the Baptist Convention.
Okay, yeah. But it wasn't an all-day conference, but it was a kind of like a workshop, more like a workshop, and it was like 9 to 12 or 9 to 1, and it was geared for children, for teachers to help start a special needs ministry.
Right.
And that was just amazing because, like, they were explaining how these different churches that have started this, because what happens is a lot of these families that say have children with different kinds of disabilities, whether it's a physical disability, psychological disability, whatever kind of disability is, whether they're developmentally delayed, if they don't feel comfortable coming to the church because their needs are not met, they're not gonna come back.
Right.
You know, they might be loving the sermon and loving the church family, but there's not something that can meet their particular child's need.
Yep.
So they were explaining, like, this one church did this. I mean, they had the means, and you can start small. Like, once you have 1 or 2 families, don't wait until you have a whole bunch of families to start. Start small, you know, because then it will build off that. But they had, like, other teachers that were set aside that would be assigned to a particular child with a disability. So each child, so they might have like 10 or 15 people in this team, and each parent, each volunteer would be assigned to this particular child. And if they had trouble sitting still during the lesson or whatever, they would sit down with them and kind of just keep them calm. And there's so many pages on Facebook. I mean, there's just so much out there. You just gotta sometimes do your research and connect with people when you go to these conferences. Mm-hmm. You know, and when you, it's so important too that when you have a team and you have the means, and sometimes, you know, the organization, if you're a part of the SBC or something. Sometimes they will. Sometimes it pays. Sometimes in some cases.
Yeah.
But the prices are decent. You know, they're not outrageous. They're decent price. But invest in it. Save up throughout the year if you know a conference is coming, because it's a good investment, not just for you, but for your entire children's ministry team.
Yeah. I mean, Eric's joked about me being the conference guy, even though he's going to the conference in August. But he's joked about that. Again, you know, he's admitted it's not always a thing. A lot of people aren't always into the conferences. I think for ministries, especially if you're trying to begin something, it's important to go to the conference, share the vision that you have for the ministry, kind of see what people idea for that is. In fact, I just recently heard someone say, like, when it comes to the facilities, it's good to invite somebody from a local church near, you know, like within a 10 or 15 mile radius of your church to come in and kind of see your facility and help you kind of see where you need improvements, you know, fresh eyes, if you will.
The other thing that I was going to say with the children's ministry, with the conference, is yeah, some of it will be repetitive, But the way I've seen it is I try to get something new each time I go. And that's what you got to do. You just got to kind of be open to what's new and see it as, okay, I already know this, or I've heard this speaker before, but look at it as I'm still being encouraged. I'm still making connections with other people that are serving in this same similar ministry as I am.
Yep.
You know?
So,
And there was still one more thing that I wanted to touch on. Was about the core values.
okay, yeah.
With the church. Each church has their individual core values.
Yep,
What they
mission or vision.
Yeah,
statements.
right. So one thing that I let the parents know that have come to visit, and let the congregation know that I advocate for, because I think it's so important for the children's ministry to be, because let's be honest, that is one of the most important ministries in a church. You could sit there and say the men's, the women's, and the children's are probably the three most important ministries within a church.
Right.
So for the children's ministry to be aligned with the vision of the church.
Right.
Align them, so then don't wait until the kids are, older in youth group or become adults to really understand what the vision of the church is. You can break it down in such a way that they're going to understand it in age-appropriate talk
Exactly.
to them. That's why, like, downstairs, once we get it all painted, I'm going to have the core values: grow, serve, and love, on, like, big kind of canvases downstairs in bright colors and everything. So I want the kids to see, this is what our church is about. This is what our vision is. And incorporate that into every aspect of the children's ministry.
Yes. And I think that was something, when you brought that to me, I hadn't seen that in any church, really.
I don't think I have either, really.
Yeah, and I thought that was definitely something, because, one thing, Dave Stratton, who was a dear friend of mine, he had always, when he was youth pastor at New Hope before he became the lead pastor, and even after, and I came in behind him as the youth pastor, one of the things he always talked about was giving the teens ownership of the youth ministry.
Right.
Why? Because we want them to understand ownership of the church. And when we say ownership of the church, what we're really talking about is getting them so that they're all in, that they're going to want to serve the community, that they're going to want to serve the people that come into the church, that they're going to want to go out and witness.
And also that their opinion matters.
Yes.
At that age, like how when we were at New Hope, we had the LITs, leaders in training.
Yep.
So we would have the older teens basically we would train them to be like a junior youth leader kind of thing.
Right.
So when they became juniors and seniors, it got to the point where we would have meetings with them, and then they would also be able to lead a lesson for the entire youth group.
Yep.
And kind of just be in charge, basically, that we were there supervising, but they were leading the games, they were leading the lesson. And it kind of gave them ownership to sit there and say, I'm important, what I have to say matters, and I can bring something to the table, too, even at this age.
And that's one thing, like, I want to see, like, if I was to say what I want to see out of our children's ministry, our youth ministry, is that I want to see that these kids excited to be there. Like, our kid, he just sits there. He's excited to be there. I go out to work on the sign or something, and he's there. He's like, "How can I help you, Pastor?" It's this thing where he's excited. He didn't get that from the previous pastor, and like you made mention before we were recording, how Sunday as he was leaving, he just high fives me, as he's walking out, and he's excited to be there. He's excited that he's getting attention, but also he's excited that he's learning, that he's retaining, that he's falling more and more in love with Jesus each and every week. We hear from his mother, just the questions that he's asking, and we see the growth in his parents. And that I think goes with the men's and women's ministry. But anyway, I think that's about it. I think we need
can talk forever.
we can talk forever. We hope that on the next time that Natalie's here, we can get Sarah Malloy here and have her and Natalie talk about women's ministry in a revitalization, because they're they're a few years ahead of us, and it's good. But these are things that I think a lot of people don't think about. In fact, one thing, we'll throw this one out there, and leave comments on the Facebook or the Twitter or
definitely.
Instagram.
We would love to hear from you guys.
But one of the things that has really been a question for Natalie is we're planning a relaunch of the church. We've been there just over a year, and we'll be there about almost a year and a half when we do the relaunch. But one of the things that we've been talking about is sending out mailers, and one of your fears is what happens if you get 30 kids there and we don't have enough teachers. So we didn't even touch on that. That's a concern for a lot of churches. What happens, because the states have teacher to student ratios that need to be met, and actually in churches those things need to be thought of too, because you've mentioned, if the teacher has to go use the facilities,
right?
They can't leave the kids down there by themselves. There's liabilities and stuff there.
And when you have a small congregation, if half your church is not there, it's one of those things that.
So there's a lot of questions, a lot more we can talk about in this. But we're gonna close this episode out of the Practical Church Revitalization podcast. Once again, if you like this, if you've been listening, I know this last month, earlier this month, Eric and I came across some people on one of the Facebook pages. I wish I had written your names down, but guys, just the fact that you're listening to us just lifted Eric and I up, knowing that we're getting listened to, that this is something God laid on our hearts, and that it's definitely being used and being a blessing to pastors out there. And so
and I know that you can feel lonely when you're on this journey, but know that we want to be here for you guys. So if you need prayer, or you have questions, or you want to get in touch with me, I'd be happy to talk to you and encourage you and pray with you.
So let me just close out with this. Like us on Facebook. You like our page on Facebook. Give us a rating on YouTube. iTunes, I should say. Give us a like on SoundCloud. Those things help get us out there for people. If you're being ministered to and fed and encouraged, that's going to help others get the same thing. The encouragement and being fed, and just the ideas that you're not alone in this journey. We're all walking this same road together. Christ is with us, but we're all brothers and even sisters as we've been talking with Natalie here in revitalization, in ministry together. So again, like us on iTunes, subscribe to us, give us a rating, give us a review. Those things are going to help. Be on the lookout. Hopefully, you'll know when we get this web page done. You'll see it. We'll definitely put it out there. That's also going to have links to the SoundCloud and iTunes for you. There's a couple other goodies that are going to be on there. Like I said, Eric and I are going to be writing blogs on there. And also, once again, if you're available, if you're in the area, or if you just happen to be able to be able to go on August 27th and 28th. The North American Missions Board Replant Summit is going to be happening those 2 days in Alpharetta, Georgia at NAM headquarters. That is going to be, I think, an exciting time. I know that they're actually going to be talking about replants in urban areas and replants in rural areas. So Eric does urban, I do rural, and that's going to be a time for us to again be fed and encouraged. And if you're going to be down there, if you're listening and you're going to be down there, again, the 26th, 8 p.m. at the Waffle House on Old Mill Parkway, I believe it is, Old Milton Parkway, something like that. We're going to be there. We'd love to connect with you and talk with you. But with that, I think this brings the end of our podcast. This is probably our longest podcast since our debut. But yeah, I needed Eric here. So I miss you, buddy. But anyway, Eric will be back with me the next time. We're actually going to probably Skype for that podcast. So hear how that one goes. Come back and we'll see you. May God bless you and keep you, and we'll talk to you later.
God bless.
The Practical Church Revitalization podcast is sponsored by Overseed. Overseed's vision is to see growing historic churches in every New England town reaching their communities for Christ. If you want to be part of a mentorship program and you live in the New England area, please go to overseed.org and find out how you can get in contact with one of the hub churches in the area or one of the many pastoral network cohorts that are run in the area. Once again, go to overseed.org for more information on the Overseed Network.